Today I'm going to show you how to go from this.
Tell me a lie. Tell me you love me one more time, only for a while.
To this.
Tell me you lie. Tell me you love me one more time, only for a while.
Oh, and also some effect stuff like this.
Tell me you love me one more time, only for a while.
These are the things that I'll run through, and remember I'm doing a remix contest for this song, and you can find the link to the contest and the vocal stems in the description. As always, one of the first 500 commenters will win a free mastering done by me. Remember to follow me on Instagram if you're less than 80 years old, but I'll shut up now and let's dive into it. Now this vocal is pop/EDM oriented, but the same principles apply to any vocal, and I'm going to cover all of the most common vocal mixing techniques. I'm going to go over a step-by-step process that I use, and hopefully that can provide some value for you guys. Now this video is going to be about mixing primarily, but I'm going to talk real quick about having a decent starting point, because this vocal was actually recorded with a half-broken SE-X1 mic that cost less than $100, since my regular Rode K2 mic was under repair. Now I wouldn't recommend going much lower than $100, but you can easily find a good enough mic for around $100 or even lower if it's already used. These are some solid options for vocal mics around $100. What's also very important is recording in a room with good acoustics, like a treated studio or a vocal booth, or even you can even put like a mic inside a closet and fill it up with blankets. That actually works surprisingly well. I've done it a lot. And using a pop filter can help a lot too. Now for the actual recording of the vocal, that's a whole other subject. I'm not going to get into that in this video, but it's a good idea to have a plan of attack, meaning you know what you're going to record in advance. So you know you're going to record the lead, you're going to record the dubs, the harmonies, the leads, the upper vocal harmony, the octave below, and so forth. Okay, that was a lot of talk. I'll shut up now and let's look at the first step, which is comping. So with comping, you just take out the words that you like. For instance,
Tell me a lie.
it's a bit too soft intro.
Tell me a
Don't want that whisper.
Tell me a Tell me a Tell me a lie.
So for instance, I would choose that one because that has a abrupt start, and then for instance here,
Tell me a lie.
it's pretty good.
Tell me a lie.
Don't want that vibrato, so maybe I would go for...
Tell me a lie.
That's more of how I want it, but again, this is a taste thing, so you just have to figure out what you want. But here I want that...
Tell me a lie.
that sort of sound, if that makes sense. In the intro, that was just one of her takes, so I have obviously lots of takes here. I put them all together and it ended up sounding like this.
Tell me a lie. Tell me you love me one more time, only for a while.
So that's just how it sounded how I wanted it. It's just a matter of taste, really, and I've cut up like, this is an individual one, but some places I even have like just a part of a word. So it's just fine-tuning what you like. And also shout out to the singer, Alida. She's amazing. She's the best and I love her so much. I'll link her in the description. Amazing writer, amazing vocalist. Please do check her out. She's the reason why I didn't have to do too much comping here. So that was quickly comping. Now the next step is balancing. What I mean by that is you balance the volume of everything so it sounds natural, pretty much. So for instance, these dubs, you see that they have huge volume discrepancies. I've automated them to be more fluent. Now, a lot of people just slap on a compressor, and that can be fine, but I prefer doing it this way before fitting it into the compressor, or else the compressor will overreact and it will just start sounding unnatural, and I just feel like this creates a better result.
Tell me a lie.
Just so it sounds flat and it's more controlled. And I've done this with every single layer, pretty much. The harmonies.
Tell me a lie. Tell me you love me one more time, only for a while.
So the goal is pretty much to make, even though it's comped and you've put different types together, it sounds like one take. Especially important for the lead ones, like the harmonies and the dubs, not so important. But at least for the lead, it has to sound like one take, even though it wasn't. Now you've balanced it out and we're ready to go into auto-tuning. This is how it sounds before.
Tell me a lie. Tell me you love me one more time, only.
Again, she sings so well, so there's not much to do, and I've comped it so that the takes are very on key as well, but there are some slight off tunes that you might want to fix. But in this case, I just used the auto-tune and on a pretty decent retune speed, not too high and not too low.
Tell me a lie. Tell me you love me one more time.
It doesn't do much and you can't really hear it, but it definitely helps and just makes it sound a bit more pleasant to the ear. And when everything's auto-tuned well together, that really adds up. If there's some things that are a bit off, it can create some like dissonant sounds, and yeah. But a good trick can be to go back into the comping if the auto-tune sounds too natural, and then find a take that is more in pitch, or even pitch it yourself. Just cut out that and pitch it a bit more correctly. That can be a good way to make it sound more natural. If you need more autotune, or you want to fine-tune it or add vibrato, remove vibrato, then you can use a graph mode in an autotune. Now, I like this graph mode in autotune, but I usually use the Waves autotune graph mode, or even Melodyne is very, very good as well. Now I'm going to try and make this video as friendly for everyone, even if you just have the stock plugins. So if you don't have any autotune, I've done this trick myself a lot, and it can work very well. Is you just input the vocal melody in like a sine wave or a piano, and then you actually go in and cut it up and just pitch every single phrase by themselves. It can actually create a very, very good result, and I've done it on a lot of vocals myself. For instance, Strangers Do, I think I did that on almost the whole vocal. It works especially well if the singer is on key a lot, but it's a nice trick that you can use. It takes some more time, obviously, but it works if you don't have any autotune. Now we've autotuned it, it sounds great to my ears, at least, and we've done it with all the layers. Let's hear how that sounds.
Tell me you lie. Tell me you love me one more time, only for a while.
I've gone through and auto-tuned every single layer by themselves. So for instance, the left dub,
Tell me you lie.
it's a bit off actually, and the right dub,
Tell me you lie.
doesn't matter too much with dubs and harmonies.
Tell me you lie.
Another harmony,
Tell me you lie.
bottom layer. I've auto-tuned them by themselves, because if you auto-tune more than one signal, it gets messy and it sounds horrible. So now that we have the vocals in key, it's time to remove the things we don't want. This means EQing everything you don't need, and I've done this over multiple EQs, but for instance, this one is a starter where I've taken out a lot of notches.
Tell me you lie.
The way that you do this is just have a really high Q and you put a notch and you go through.
Tell me you love me one more time. Tell me you love me. Tell me you love.
Oof. I'm sorry. So I didn't like that frequency, of course.
Tell me you love.
So I can remove that one.
Tell me you love.
Be wary of not doing this too much though, because most of these resonant frequencies are very important for the vocals to sound natural and full and melodic. You can often just do a couple decibels here and there without hurting the vocal. So this is without.
Tell me you love me.
And with.
Tell me you love me.
She sounds slightly better, and I've done this over multiple rounds in the later projects and so forth. And then I just cut out the lows. So I've bounced out the vocals and put them in another project where I continued notching out even more resonant frequencies.
Tell me you lie.
Some of them are automated as well, which can be a nice trick to do,
Tell me you lie.
which you can see there. Oh, and you probably heard that it's pitching one semitone up as well. That's a nice trick, because her vocal range was better one semitone down, but we still wanted the vocal one up, because the instrumental just sounded better in that range. Just pitching it up one or down one can sound very natural, so it doesn't really matter, and test it out for yourself. It can be a nice trick if your vocalist is struggling with some range, or it just sounds better somewhere else. And we have another notch here.
Tell me you lie.
There were a lot of things that I wanted to control on this vocal, since the lead is very in the middle and very, very loud. And I've also EQ'd out the dubs very heavily.
Tell me you lie. Tell me you love me one more time.
It's to the point where it doesn't even sound good anymore, but they're there to support the lead layer, so they sound bad on their own, but with the vocal, they really help bring that out.
Tell me you lie. Tell me you love me.
They're even automating in volume so that they exaggerate the pronunciation of some words. For instance, they come in very strongly there,
Love me one more time, only for a while.
and then they pull back again. So it can be a nice trick to play with dubs and the extra harmonies and just bring them back and in to create some moments and flow in the vocals, if that makes sense. I'm rambling, I'm sorry. Because the next step would usually be de-essing, but this vocal doesn't have a single S in it. It's crazy.
Tell me you lie. Tell me you love me one more time, only for a while.
It's pretty much just some T's and stuff that I've notched out with resonant frequencies notches, and I've automated the volume of some of the words to make them pop out a bit more. But in general, I didn't really have to de-ess anything, so I've pretty much solved it with all the resonance stuff. And that's another thing. If you don't have a deesser, you can easily do it with a notch filter on the S's and just automating that when the S's hit. I've done that a lot, and I actually usually don't use deessers. I just do that if it's really bad. But S's that are really sharp can be a bit annoying, but they're also very, very important to the energy of the vocal. So taking away too much can also be a dangerous thing. So to keep removing stuff we don't want, we start compressing. I actually started compressing already in this project.
Tell me you lie.
With a quite heavy compression.
Tell me you love me one more time, only for a while.
Now I know I said that I usually like to do it mostly with the automations and balancing, but in this case I actually use a very, very heavy compressor on the lead.
Tell me you lie.
We're talking 4:1 ratio. It's giving 8 decibels of gain reduction.
Tell me you lie.
Pretty harsh attack and release. It's not that bad. The thing is that this is parallel compression, so it has this button where you can pull back the dry and wet, so it's putting back in the compressed signal to the dry signal. So that's a very nice trick. This is how it sounds 100% wet.
Tell me you lie.
It sounds way too compressed and flat and squashed, and this is dry.
Tell me you lie.
It needs controlling, so just bringing it back in to 50.
Tell me you lie.
In my opinion, sounds like a sweet spot, so that can be a nice technique if you don't want to go too ham on the compression. Depending on what compressor you have, I would just do a threshold so that it hits maybe around 4 decibels of gain reduction, a ratio of 2 maybe. It's a nice one. An attack that is maybe a bit higher than this, but I would just experiment, and it's a bit of a tasting. How squashed do you want your vocals to be? There's another trick I've done here, which is using a PSP vintage warmer. Now what this does is act as a saturator, exciter sort of thing, and this is without.
Tell me you lie.
Obviously way less volume, but
Tell me you lie.
it just gives the track a bit more spark, and it actually acts sort of as a compressor actually, which then feeds into the real compressor by adding more harmonics and excitement and just squashing the vocal just a bit, which I like. So try experiment with your distortion tools, and just having a little spark can be a nice touch to give it some more energy. And for the other layers, I've compressed them even harder. For instance, the harmonies and dubs,
Tell me you lie.
they have 100% wet on the same sort of, I think it's the same settings, yeah? That's just to squash them completely, because these are just support layers. They don't have to sound natural, and they can just be, in this case, I wanted them squashed to just do their job and be as low as possible in the mix. So now we've removed stuff we don't want, it's time to add stuff that we want. Oh, never mind, let's just go through quickly stereo imaging, because we have a lot of layers to balance in the mix, and I think that's an important aspect as well. So what I've done here is, obviously the dubs are to either side, super wide, and they're obviously different takes, so they sound even wider and a bit off timing. And then we have the deep layers, the bottom layer, the high layer. They're both in the middle alongside the lead. But other than that, we have harmonies. That one's 50%, I think, sort of 50% to that side, and the other harmony is 50% to this side. So all the other layers except the lead sound like this.
Only for a while.
So here you can hear how I'm automating the volume of especially the harmonies, that they come in on certain words and back on others. And I think that's a very important trick that you can use. And they give, when they're this spread across the stereo field, you can easily add effects, and you can easily have the lead being in the middle.
Tell me you lie.
So there's lots of room for the lead. But yeah, let's add some stuff. So what I've done here is added a CQ. Now you can use any EQ you want. I just really like the sound of this one.
Tell me you lie.
Just gives it some spark. Then all the layers go into this mix bus. The first thing that I have here is actually a boosting of the sides.
Tell me you lie.
And without.
Tell me you lie.
Just wanted it to be a bit wider, and that only affects the sides, so it doesn't affect the middle. It basically just makes the dubs and harmonies a bit louder, but I was just lazy and I just slapped that on. And then we have the reverbs. Reverb is a huge subject to go into, but I think the most important thing is to keep in mind what kind of vocal it is and what you want with it. This vocal, I wanted really big, epic sound, so I have 2 reverbs. One is a bit shorter, 1.5 second decay.
Tell me you lie.
Still pretty long, and it has a lot of highs in it still, but still some pre-delay, so it doesn't interfere too much with the vocal. Pretty low mix. And then I have another reverb that is way longer, 2.5 seconds, super long, but I've cut out more of the highs, so it doesn't interfere too much with the mix, and a really long pre-delay, so it really stays in the background. But that's sort of the bigger vibe, and then we have this shorter reverb in front.
Tell me you lie.
This is without,
Tell me you lie.
and then with.
Tell me you lie.
Can't really hear it, but it adds some extra like chamber cave feeling to it. Now with reverb, there aren't really any rules. I would only try to make it not overlap the vocal itself, so you can do that by compressing the reverb to the vocal. You can have a longer pre-delay as I did here, or you can even just automate the wet and dry, which is something that I do most of the time. I didn't do it here for some reason. And also filtering it correctly is a very important way of getting things to sound right. If your reverb doesn't have any filter options, what you can do is link the vocal to a send channel. You put 100% reverb on that, and then you put an EQ after that, and you can just automate it and filter it how you like. And what I like to do is, after I get the reverb right, then I put a delay before the reverb so that the delay gets affected by the reverb as well, but I like to get the reverb right first. And in this case, I tried to fit the tempo and fit the vibe and just have a regular quarter note, long feedback delay. It's a single echo, it's not ping-ponged or anything. It's
Tell me you lie. Tell me you love me one more time. Only
and what I've done is automate the mix a lot, since the feedback is obviously very, very long and it's going to clutter it a lot. And I've also cut it out a lot. So this is how it sounds. And without. It also has this filter saturated thing, radio style filter, but again you can use the same trick as with the reverb, send it to a channel and then filter it to your liking. But I think that's a good idea. But I think the most important part again is just to keep it away from the vocal itself and have it automate, as I've done here, in between where you want it to actually hit.
me one more time. Only for a while.
And to finish off the vocal bus, I just have an EQ taking out some of the highs because I just felt there were too many highs really.
Tell me you lie.
So you can always just end up like tweaking it and treating it as a mastered track after you're done. Let's go into some of the other stuff that I've done with the vocal, with like a vocoder and stuff like that. This is how that sounds. So it's automating in and out with the volume, again to fit the wording and where you want the harmonies to be pretty much. Now you can use any pitch modifier plugin. I think that most DAWs have them built in as stock, but I've used Manipulator here and I've routed it to the MIDI with a output port 2 and then the output port 2 here as well, where I've put in the chords of the song and just link that to the vocal and it should sound like that. And I've EQ'd it heavily so it sounds really ugly, but I did that to have it fit the rest of the track pretty much. So this is how that looks. But the most satisfying thing in my opinion here is the vocoder hit that comes here. So what I did was I took that one, I rendered that one out and I stretched it so it's like time, and I added a lot of reverb and a lot of delay to really accentuate that hit. Let's hear it with the rest of the vocals. Without that hit, just really wanted that time to be super accentuated, and with the rest of the instrumental actually you can hear it without. And then with. Just adds a slight touch, and these things can mean a lot in the bigger picture of the song. So doing things like that can help a lot. And I'm going to show you another thing that I did in the second verse here. Just cut out a lot of highs, a lot of lows, made it sort of a radio style filter, and in the context of the song it just gave it some different character. Without it, it would sound like this. And I wanted something different for the second verse, so don't be afraid to experiment with filters, radio style stuff, vocoders. There are no rules, just play around with it and have fun. And I hope I gave you some ideas to what you can do with vocals. Please like the video if you liked the video, comment the video if you commented the video, subscribe if you subscribed, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much for watching, bye.